Order, 2 p.m. on October the 15th, 2024, Tuesday, 2 p.m., City Hall. Call to order, please, and roll call.
Chair Michael Montoya,
Present.
Member Bob Withers.
Present.
Sorry.
I don't have the other, who's missing? Oh, Member Alan Franken? Not here?
Francine, is Francine's listening? Martinez.
Martinez.
Yeah.
Maxine Martinez, also absent.
And
And
Dana.
Dinah minus, present.
Dana. Do we have a quorum?
Maynes.
Correct.
Every time I see you, I spell that out.
We do have a quorum, Mr. Matray.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And you take a motion to have,
I so move
I
that we
second.
approve it as written.
okay, second.
Second by Dinah.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, motion passes. Approval of minutes of September 9th, 2024.
I make a motion to approve the
First.
minutes.
Dana,
And I'll second that.
second, Bob. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Aye.
All right, none opposing, motion passes. Public input, do we have any?
We have no public input today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We did miss Pledge of Allegiance. Bob,
Oh.
would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Item number 6, letter A, September 2024 finance report. Mr. Madrid?
Chair, members of the committee, I only have a few anomalies to go over with you because it's only September 30th, and if we had any issues, it wouldn't be good. We don't have any issues. The first one that I want to point out to you is on the first page, under the line item General Services. If you compare last year's numbers to this year's numbers, you're going to see a lot higher budgeted amount, and you're going to see a lot higher actual amount in the budget and actuals column FY24 compared to FY25. That is due to an increase in our general liability and property and casualty insurance. Those numbers are not known when we formulate the budget in April and May. Risk management does not let us know what our assessment is, and it's an assessment. It's not a quote. Either we're in or we're out. And this year was a little over $1 million higher than last year. And I'm not sure why. I know that there's contributing factors in general to the state. COVID is one. They are still trying to rebuild the rates and fund balances that COVID caused, because during that time there was no increase. And that was a good thing, but we're paying for it now. The city has had an increase in claims over the last 4 or 5 years. And that, I don't know if you noticed, but I noticed in last year's deductible expenses that we paid for claims within the police department, fire department, and in general. Our deductibles went from about 80,000 to over 400,000 last year. And those are generally $10,000 at a time. That's our deductible. So that's that department. And that's the reason for that major increase.
Mr. Madrid?
Yeah.
I may, you do have a safety officer report, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And that's
Reports
another
to the
factor.
council? He
I'm glad you
reports.
brought that up, Dinah, because another thing that has changed is risk management. Used to assume the responsibility of doing training statewide. For example, how to lift, sexual harassment, how to use a fire extinguisher. During COVID, they stopped that. They haven't brought it back.
So is your safety officer in charge of bringing some professional development to the staff?
Yes, matter of fact,
for your
actually 2 weeks
lifting
ago,
and-
we had the sexual harassment portion. These ones are mandatory.
Right,
There are some that are not, that I don't know whether they'll come back or not. We'll continue the mandatory ones with our safety officer. But that is a good point. That's a big factor in our rating. The,
I have a, if I may,
Mr. Bruno.
on the first one there.
Yeah.
The police department is the largest budget,
yes,
and the fire department's the second largest budget under the general fund. Do you provide financial information monthly or something like that to the chief of police and the chief of fire on how they're doing financially?
We don't hand it to them. Their admins are trained on access to Tyler, and they can look it up.
Okay, so they have access to Tyler and they can then see how they're doing.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
There seems to be a fairly significant increase in budget for both the police and the fire from last year to this year. Why is that?
It's due to the negotiated collective bargaining agreements. They both receive substantial increases in compensation
Okay,
across the board.
okay, and then that was budgeted for
Yes,
in the new budget.
yes.
Why was there a fairly large increase in the budget for the finance department?
There's an additional position that's on the agenda tonight. It's going to be within the finance department, and
And
that's
what,
for grant administration.
yeah, okay. And that's that's grant administration. It's not necessarily grant writing, is it?
no,
We have a professional contractor
Yeah,
to do the grant writing.
that's Robert Archuleta?
Yes.
Okay.
This would be to, more to provide support for him and all the departments, especially in the request for reimbursement and the tracking of the timelines. That's
Okay.
one thing that we haven't been on top of.
is,
We get close to the deadline and, oh, we better spend this money.
right. Is he just a one-man operation for that?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So this will
I
This will
think we
provide some
probably need
support.
two people.
Yeah,
One could manage what's going on and the other one can manage what's coming.
right. And everything from the procurement to the reporting.
And then last question on the general fund here is that the manager's budget
Yes.
was increased significantly from last year to this year. Why is that?
That included an increase in attorney services, professional attorney services. And it also increased the salary for one of the positions. I'm not sure whether it was an additional, not an additional admin assistant, but it was an additional increase for the public information officer, one of those positions, I'm not sure which one.
Okay,
But 50,000 of that was attorney services.
okay, all right. And I do have one last question. Are we on track to deficit spend the general fund as it's written under the budget columns here, i.e., are we on track to deficit spend general fund by $7, almost $8 million this year?
My definition of deficit spend is overspend. You mean underspend?
I mean, my
Budget
definition
versus
is,
actual.
my definition is that expenses exceed income or revenue by 7.7
Oh, no, we're not
million.
on track for that. No. The anomaly that I pointed out to you, the $1 million, actually this 2.2 million that you see in FY '25 actuals, that's one of the few things that we pay in advance. We pay the insurance premiums in advance for the whole year. That distorts our expenditures at the beginning of the year. So we can't assume the same rate of spending for the rest of the year.
Okay. And that's, the insurance bill is
2.2, maybe
Mil-
give or take 50,000.
okay,
I'm not sure whether the disability and workers' comp premium are included in that initial billing. They might not be.
It should be. I would
Okay.
assume just because it's
Yeah.
how I've seen it in the past.
all right,
If
thank
it's all
you.
inclusive, but it's still very high.
It is really.
It's,
Okay,
So the next one that I want to point out is on the third page where the enterprise fund comparisons are. You'll see natural gas is only at 6% of revenues, 9% of expenditures. Hasn't gotten called yet. It's that simple. We may get to a point where in March, it looks like we're going to overspend if we have a real cold winter. But natural gas and water tend to be seasonally driven. So those are really the only things that are not right in line.
And I have a quick question on that one. So all of the spending on all four of the enterprise funds is negative compared to revenue. Is it too early to say if that means we're not charging enough to the customers for each of those four items?
Yeah, it is too early, because in some cases, we have expenses that are fixed. For example, the transfers for the administrative overhead to the general fund, those are the exact same number every month.
Yes.
We have others that are not.
Yeah.
Our tipping fees, which are significant. I know in some cases, if the billing is behind on their end by a month, they'll drop below the anticipated number, and the next month they'll go above, but they are right in line. So by February, March, if we still see the same trend, we'll be concerned.
Okay, thank you.
that's the only thing on the enterprise funds. On the,
Recreation Department, if you look at what was budgeted for other operating expenses on the bottom, you'll see that we have unspent 1.7 million. That includes 1.5 million that was budgeted for the roof replacement. That hasn't started yet. So that 1.5 million is going to be there till we actually pay for it. And that won't be until the spring at least. So you'll see that every month. All the other ones are fairly normal and routine. I know that when we get to the cannabis and the opioid, I know, Mr. Chair, you wanted to have some discussion on that topic. If you want to have that now, we can, or we can have it later.
This is an item that will be on tomorrow night's city council meeting, and if anyone has any kind of recommendations on how we should utilize this money, for, Mr. Madrid, what are the restrictions on using this money?
On opioid, there are none. It was a legal settlement between certain pharmacies and the state of New Mexico. The state of New Mexico collected all that settlement money and came up with a formula, I'm not sure whether it's population or budget or what, that they used to distribute it to the state, local governments, cities and counties. It doesn't have any restrictions. Mr. Chair, you wanted to know the cash balance on that? Opioid as of September 30th is 1,193,751. That one doesn't change because it's not a recurring tax.
So we've gotten all the opioid money that we're gonna get?
I don't know. I don't know. That's one pharmacy, and I'm not familiar enough with the legal case to know if other pharmacies are gonna reach a settlement also. I think this one was Walgreens. So there could be 3 more, depending on how the legal thing goes.
And Mr. Madrid, is that money just sitting there or is it being invested?
It's sitting there now. It's gonna be invested, a portion of it.
Through where?
State Treasurer's Office.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Matter of fact, just in case I forget in the next 20 minutes, we're gonna be initiating another $5 million transfer in the next couple of days, in addition to what you see on the report that you have. So it's gonna be gradual. So, yeah, next month when we meet again, take a look and we'll see progress every month till we get it. All within the policy. That's another discussion. But in regard to the cannabis,
Going back to opioids before we move on, that money can be spent on,
whatever the governing body decides.
thank you. And again, I asked this committee to make any kind of recommendations that they see the needs are for the city of Las Vegas, and we can make those recommendations to mayor and council. So if
Okay.
you have any,
Like, hire somebody.
Oh.
You need to put somebody to spearhead this, have some type of a program. Okay, put somebody in charge, hire a person to spearhead, activities for students, make awareness of drug use, safe and drug-free community, have events for them. But I think that somebody needs to spear that. If not, it's just gonna sit there.
Well, in that regard, Dinah, the money is completely unrestricted. It's not like the tobacco settlement where you have to spend that money on smoking prevention or things like that. You could use this money to build a house for the city manager. It is that unrestricted.
Right?
So, as
I'm just
you
saying,
pointed out, Mr. Chair,
right, just hire some
ideas are wide open.
activities for students, start them at a young level to be aware of drugs, training.
Like the DARE program,
But we used to
Way
have
back.
the DARE program back in the day
Yeah.
with David Maestas back, he was a police officer.
Mhm.
So he helped. in-
so it could be used for parks or structures or
anything,
new city hall or anything you want.
Oh my goodness.
no,
I would hope
One,
you guys would want to use it for the opioid
Yeah.
instead of building homes or.
one recommendation I would make is that it should either be a one-time thing, or it should be something in limited term. Again, $1 million will not fund a position for 20 years, maybe 5. But, those are just some considerations.
Thank you. Cannabis?
Cannabis, any restrictions that are placed from here forward, it's gonna be another item of consideration for the legislature. Up to now, the state has not placed any. There's been some for consideration that there be restrictions for exactly the type of program you're talking about?
They haven't made those requirements yet. So this is an excise tax, and it is recurring. This balance is significantly lower. Right now, the balance is about 270,000, and it generates between 9 and 10,000 every month. So they did allow us to budget that amount now that it's been in effect for over a year. But there has been no restrictions placed by the state. The municipalities that have done it have directed this money toward issues related to addiction. Santa Fe is a good example of that. And
It varies, much like the gaming taxes go towards gaming addiction. The alcohol tax goes towards that. I think the intent of the cannabis tax is something like that, but it's not in the statute and it hasn't been changed. So there's really no restrictions on that either. This one would be a good one to dedicate for recurring. Because it is a recurring tax.
And the ones that would know more about like all these addictions are probably your first responders. They're the ones that are really going out to what all these calls are, to the homes, to see what is needed. You know, they're the ones that would have an idea of what is needed, you know. I'm going back to the
ER
opioid
doctors.
this would be a real good one too.
Sure.
They see the overdoses for alcohol and drugs, and they treat homeless people. They'd have a pretty good idea. Or community-based services, they'd have a good idea what causes a lot of our community issues.
So that could be used for Samaritan House?
Yes. And that would be one that's not a burden on the general fund.
Yes.
Right.
I have a couple questions on the FEMA money.
Okay,
Um,
that was
That's all I had for the anomalies anyway.
on the FEMA money, have we gotten all 113 million of that in actual cash in the bank?
Yes.
Okay. What is the internal accounting project code for that?
260 or 240, remember?
For FEMA, it's two. The fund number? I think it's 285. Let me double check. Double check that.
Oh, I have it here.
No, and when you set up this type of budget, okay, so let's say you had 113 million. Do you have line items that go down that you wanna budget $1 million for, I don't know, let's say you had salaries and benefits in there. And then you have professional development, and then you have allocated
Yeah, there's a
certain
group of
things,
line
general
items.
material and supply and,
We add them as we need them.
right, but as you need them. So
Yeah.
is it just put in all in one for now? And then you just go down and have all these transfers that I see, you know, for your budget transfers.
Well,
We're
that
actually
how that
making
works, or-
expenditures directly from this fund. For example, the replacement of the water treatment plant,
Right,
we are paying it directly from that fund. Because in the event that we need to seek more reimbursement from them, we want it all costed into the same place.
because you have, I'm sure you had something budgeted for 113 million. I mean, what were the needs? Was that discussed at budget season as to how you all intended to spend
Well,
it?
In the language of the funding agreement, where we received the last 98 million, the language was included, tell me if I'm wrong, Counselor, for the replacement of water treatment and water treatment systems. Anything outside of that, we have to submit for approval.
So is that like, but that's, this 113 is supposed to go on, the 113 million?
Yes.
And what is the project code for that?
285.
285.
Okay. And is it, am I correct in my understanding that prior to this month, you had booked some water treatment facility upgrades, cleanup, starting to get it fixed up under the water budget in the enterprise fund, but you've now moved all that over to this FEMA fund, is that correct?
I can't say we moved 100%. We've moved a good majority.
Okay,
But we have all the documentation for if it was paid, then we can do a journal entry for it. If
okay.
it's still pending, then we haven't.
Yeah, and when that happens, you'll scrub it, you move it from the water
Yes,
enterprise fund over to 285.
it'll be costed
All right.
properly.
All right, Thank you.
And along with other things, I mean, it's not only things that were paid directly from there, it's things that were not. For example, we're still trying to compile all the overtime for first responders for the
Oh,
night
yeah.
of the flood and water department employees, all of that. That is all allowable costs that will be moving in there.
Thank you.
Hold on, Mr. Marjorie.
So, is that on the finance report?
Get a breakdown of,
Oh,
finances.
I do have a question on that, thank you.
Yeah, get a breakdown on there too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'll generate some discussion on that.
Last page, this is just a very rough framework. If you all have any ideas on how to present it in the kind of detail that you want to see, let us know.
This is really basic information and if,
Well, I think one thing that we should do is show the change, show year-to-date numbers. What have we invested year-to-date, and especially what have we earned year-to-date instead of that month? This earning is only 1 week's worth. So you'll see a lot bigger number for the October report.
And how are you keeping track of that?
We get it off the state treasurer's website.
No, but I mean, what are you doing here? Are you creating another fund that then can be spent? Because you're gonna start collecting quite a bit of money.
No, because it's completely unrestricted, this goes right into the general fund.
Ah, okay.
There's no restrictions on this at all.
And the good thing about that is that that money is being reinvested right away back into the,
Yeah, you're getting compound interest on it,
exactly.
because at this point, you're not taking any out. I have a nitpick or two. The first line under cash, you say general fund pool cash, Southwest Capital. I thought the general fund pooled cash, well, I'm thinking of the general fund as account 100. And that only has 8 million or something like that in it. So where does the rest of that makes up 34 million come from? And then the same
In funds
question.
like the cannabis and opioid and,
Okay, but then my other question is that the next line, enterprise funds, I thought there was more like 28 million in that fund as of the end of the beginning of this fiscal year, the end of last fiscal year. So I thought there was more like 28 there, and then it shows only 14 here.
well, that's where the confusion is. Bank, where it is in the bank versus where it is in the fund are
So
not
I
the
should
same.
look at, I
Are
should
not
pay
the same.
attention to the bank name that's on it, not Not necessarily the
Well, you
words that
should
come
pay
in the.
attention to the general ledger. That's where the true balances are.
Yeah,
We may have different two different banks for the enterprise funds,
yeah,
but they're all in the general ledger correctly.
okay,
That's what we
right.
reconcile for.
that's cool. And you have indicated that there's 108 million in the local government investment pool, but you're gonna add 5 million more here soon, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, by the end of this week, we'll have another 5 million. We're taking them the easiest ones first. FEMA was the easiest one. This next 5 million are investments that we already had. And because Southwest Bank is gonna be phasing out, well, we might as well move that money right away and start getting double the earnings that we were at Southwest Capital.
and I would encourage you to move even more.
No doubt.
You knew I was gonna say that, but,
Yeah, it actually took you about 30 minutes longer.
oh
It took you
geez,
32
wow, I'm
minutes.
losing
Wow.
my edge.
No,
So,
point well taken. I mean
just for
that.
the record,
Yes.
Morris, I encourage you to move more faster.
Yeah, and I don't hear any argument.
Okay, thank you.
On to item, letter B, resolution 2431 bar.
Okay. This resolution and related budget adjustment is a routine, really housekeeping issue to budget money that we've received. And I'll go through them quickly just to review them. The first one is state distribution of library funds to the Carnegie Library. Every year, the legislature has, every year they can afford it, I should say, general bonds issue specifically for libraries and their book and media purchases. So this distribution happens 9 out of 10 years. This is our distribution for the year. This was from 2022, I think. Yeah, 2022. Took a while to sell the bonds. So now we have that money available. We just need to put it in our budget. That's what that one's for. The next one in 217, this one is actually a refund of money that we did not spend. We got an allocation of 300,000 last year, fiscal year 2024. That was from the Recruitment and Retention Fund. Because of our inability to recruit at the compensation that we did have, and probably some other issues, we weren't able to spend all that money. We did get it in advance. So we have to refund 245,958 of it. The reason that we're budgeting it is so we won't have a negative expense in the general ledger.
Yeah.
It's just a housekeeping thing. The next one is to budget some additional community development block grant money that we were given. The Community Development Commission from the state of New Mexico, they allocate federal HUD money every year for the CDBG program. They meet, I think, quarterly, and when these funds are not spent by any local governments, the money goes back into that state pot. This is part of unspent money because we were showing progress on our project. They decided to give that to us as an additional budget with no matching restrictions. So this is dedicated for the Hot Springs Boulevard project. And it was accepted by the council in May. None of it's been expended. We waited to put it into the FY25 budget. That's why it's here, so we can spend it. The last one is a cooperative agreement with the New Mexico Tourism Department. This is part of the statewide New Mexico True program. That program involves participation from counties and cities that want to participate. They're invited to because the state provides a major portion of the funding. It promotes all of New Mexico, but it takes into account locals. You will see special commercials for Las Vegas, New Mexico as part of this program. You'll see billboards, things like that, that we don't do, but we contribute funding to. You'll see that tourism will put in 100,000 to that program. We put in 200,000. It's not a general fund, it's a lodger's tax initiative. So that's where that'll come from. And that's basically what those appropriations for. And we ask your recommendation for approval for tomorrow night's meeting.
Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2431, Bar?
I make a motion.
Make a motion.
And I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, seeing none, motion passes. Discussion on investments, letter C.
Okay, Bob, this is where I get to pick on you.
Yes, sir.
Go
I
ahead.
handed out a draft of, an initial draft, initial revision of the investment policy the city had that was 14 years old, the last meeting. And I asked for any input. Anybody have anything? If you don't today, that's fine. Just want to remind you that we want to incorporate your recommendations and consider anything that you all would have before I present a draft to the city council. One thing that I do want to bring up that we haven't really talked about a lot is the balance between investing
At the state level and the local level. I know that the raw earnings are half of what we can get somewhere else. I get that. But I'm not an economist, but I know that investing in institutions like local banks creates an economic engine for local businesses. Now, I don't know how much of an engine that is here because I don't have the history from the banks. I know that when I worked at Highlands, they did have that history. They had exclusive banking with one bank that developed all of that data for them. And they found that every student that received financial aid that came in from outside, each dollar turned over 5 times in the community before it left. There's that same type of factor for local businesses. I don't know what they are, but in the research that I've done, there is credibility in the theory that in a small town such as ours, where we don't have a lot of banks, and the banks that we have are not that big, investing a good amount of money, for example, had we kept $100 million here locally, that's $100 million that one single small bank didn't have before that was available to lend. So there may be some cases where a local car dealership wants to open. And I've heard of that with all this FEMA money coming in. But they can't borrow locally because the local bank just does not have $10 million to lend them for their inventory. So that's the only point that I want to make, is that this, for our local banks, may create capital that is just not there now, that could be available to lend to a car dealership that may be here for 20 years and will regenerate all that grocery tax over and over and over. The other good part to consider is that we cannot engage in any risky investments. Well, when we keep our money in a local bank, it's insured. And the bank is taking all the risk. If that car dealership fails, that's on the bank. We still have our 10 million in there. So, just for your consideration, if there's anything that we want to write into the policy in that regard, we should at least consider it, even if we don't do it. I would support anything risk-free. That's just how government is. But I'll get off my soapbox now.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I understand what you just said, Morris, but speaking as just one person myself, I come from a slightly different view, and I'm a bit of a maximizer, and so I'm not sure how helpful putting it into the local banks, which in my translation of that phrase is, and getting a lesser return on investment for the city of Las Vegas. So I've been toying with the idea. Again, this is just one person speaking, and I don't want to look for votes or anything like that here at this point. But I would recommend that we have something in the investment policy, like the dual goal of this investment policy is to preserve the principal while achieving maximum rate of return, which is the opposite of what you just said. And so that's just from my perspective. And if there's more information that's specific that could be presented about that leverage factor created by the city putting significant millions into local banks, and I'm assuming you're thinking of only the two local banks, not
And
Wells Fargo? Or
Next
would-
year, we'll only have one. And Wells Fargo is not considered a local bank within our policy. The local bank defined in our policy is with the head office located in Las Vegas.
Okay. So according to the policy, there's only one local bank then?
There will be next year, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And just so, nobody misunderstands, I'm not in favor of that. That's not my position. My position is to inform the committee of all the options.
Yeah. I understand.
And, my point of view on this is that I think that the city of Las Vegas has, for a long time, not invested their money well, for one. Number two, I think that our investment return will also come through the state funding. Because the more that we put into the pool, and the more every city or municipality or county or entities put into that pool, the more New Mexico gains from it. And we're putting in a drop in the bucket comparison to what they invest for New Mexico. And that money is returned back to the communities through the legislature, through different forms of funding for local communities. So it all comes back regardless, to me, I think, some way or another, because the more we invest in New Mexico, the more New Mexico will gain throughout the state, and not just in one area. So that's my stand on that. You have any
That's pretty
questions?
good. No, don't.
I'll go ahead and move on. That was just for discussion and on investments. Our September 2024 AP checklist report. Do you have any questions on that?
No.
No, sir? Dana? No? Okay, seeing no questions, do you have anything else, Mr. Madrid?
No, just that, in regard to investments, we're gonna continue moving forward. What I see evolving is the long-term stuff is we should absolutely go to the state treasurer's office for that. This FEMA money, we're gonna have a majority of that for at least a year. That's gonna mean some real good revenue. There's gonna be some interim that are available and could be available for a long time. The opioid settlement is a good example of that. And $1 million out of the 1.1, we should be able to invest. And well, what if we decide to buy a whole new fleet of police cars and we're gonna order them tomorrow? By the time the police cars get here, we can move that money back. We have a lot of fluidity and liquidity with the state treasurer's office. The only thing that I haven't come up with an idea for yet is those shorter term investments. The 90-day CDs that are required to stay locally. For example, debt service reserve, we can't invest that. That has to stay in a particular account. The question is,
Does that mean you're saying we can't move that to the state?
that's
Pool.
exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, please help me, I understand that. It's,
I'll give you an example. The New Mexico Finance Authority,
yeah,
they grant us a $5 million loan for wastewater treatment plant upgrades. Okay, part of the agreement is you're gonna pay $100,000 every year towards the principal. You're gonna pay 0.5% of interest. That's wonderful. But you're gonna keep 2 payments in this particular bank account that we have access to should you fail to pay. Those are the kind of debt service requirements we have.
yeah, but it's sitting over in the pool, so it's sitting there waiting to be used for that purpose.
That's out of compliance with the funding agreement. We have a lot of those funding agreements in place that we cannot change to accommodate what we want to do with the investments. They want to know exactly where that money is.
Well, it's right there, it's in the investment
But it's
pool at
not
the
where the
state
agreement
level.
says. Doesn't matter.
Can we write
It's
it
like a
in-
mortgage.
Can we write it
If you have a
into,
mortgage agreement that says you're gonna have your, what's it called? Help me, Dina. The reserve that you have for, any mortgage, for insurance, tax and all that stuff.
Escrow.
Escrow, thank you. Yes. If you have a mortgage agreement and you're required to have an escrow agreement, and you're supposed to pay that to the mortgage company, you can't tell the mortgage company, well, no, trust me, I have it over here in my savings account. You're gonna say, we don't.
I know, but can we write future fund agreements to say the money's over in the investment pool instead of
Can't
at
speak on
XY Bank?
behalf of the NMFA, and I would doubt it because although the investment pool is wonderful and it works well and never had an issue, that does involve an element of risk, which banks don't have.
And they're gonna secure their funding. So they're gonna make sure that they have their funding so that they can invest their monies also. So they're not gonna take a long shot at lending out money that might be default.
And the state treasurer could do everything 100% right. And if we had a market crash overnight, we could lose value. Not necessarily dollars, but value. Because there are repurchase agreements that overnight could be devalued. It hasn't happened in 30, 40 years. But the NMFA is subject to the same type of rules that we are.
Okay.
So that's why.
Anything to add?
With money comes big responsibility. That's all.
Yeah, unfortunately, doesn't it?
Yes, my God.
Maximization of profit always involves risk.
I know,
Yeah,
and I love
that's
risk.
right.
Well, our monies are being invested well now, so it's good to know, and
Yeah,
we're in good hands. So our next meeting will be November the 18th, 2024, 2 p.m. And I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll so move.
And this is at 2:50. First and a second, all in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say none. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Where's the gavel, Mr. Chair?
I think the clerk has it.
We need to get one so we could leave.
Short and sweet and to the
Yeah,
point.
normally it's here.
Where's Dominic today?
He was off.
Oh, nice.
We miss him too. We have a prank for him waiting in the morning.
Well,
Mr. Witters.
Yeah, I just want to give Morris that this
Love
wonderful,
notes.
this love note that I worked so hard on,
Busy golfing.
okay? And